You seem confused by the concept of numbers, but let me simplify it for you. This seat is a privilege and you are a trespasser. Move your things before I have the crew treat them like unclaimed baggage. Harrison Vane didn't just speak. He drawled with the jagged edge of a man who believed the world was his private living room. He stood in the center of the classic first-class cabin, an environment of absolute aviation luxury with deep mahogany bulkheads, hand-stitched cream leather suites, and a massive, tiered crystal chandelier recessed into the ceiling that turned every movement into a display of shimmering wealth. Harrison stood with his arms crossed, his hands empty, staring with pure, unadulterated disdain at the woman currently occupying seat 1A. The woman was Iris Thorne, a woman with deeply pigmented mahogany skin and a quiet authority that seemed to ground the entire aircraft. She was dressed in a midnight blue velvet blazer over silk trousers. New outfit. "Mr. Vane, I believe," Iris said, her voice a low, melodic resonance that cut through the pressurized hum of the cabin. "I checked the manifest. This is my seat. I suggest you find your own before the cabin doors are locked." "The manifest is a suggestion, not a law," Harrison interrupted, his voice rising in a calculated escalation of disdain. "Look at this cabin. Look at me. Then look at yourself. Do you really think a woman like you belongs in the primary suite of a transatlantic flight? You're a seating error in a nice blazer. You probably belong in the back, near the engines where it's loud enough to drown out your delusions." The cabin didn't fall silent. It erupted with the sharp, jagged laughter of the surrounding elite. A man in a charcoal gray pinstripe suit leaned out from his mahogany suite, smirking at Iris with clinical high society disdain. "Honestly, Harrison," the man laughed, swirling a glass of 30-year-old scotch, "she's very committed to the role. Seat 1A. Maybe she's the new cabin cleaner testing the cushions? Someone should tell her that first class is for the titans of industry, not the people who provide the services." The woman in the suite across the aisle joined in, pointing a manicured finger at Iris's midnight blue blazer. "I'll give her $200 to go find my missing silk scarf in the lounge. She looks like she's used to fetching things for her superiors." "Go on, Harrison. Clear the aisle before the actual elite get impatient." 12 people in the background were ostensibly minding their business, adjusting their noise-canceling headphones or reading leather-bound journals, but 8 others were acting as active witnesses, leaning into the aisle to catch every second of the humiliation with judgmental grins. "Thanks for the support. We couldn't do this without you. Subscribe for free to help us keep bringing you more stories. Where are you watching from? Drop your city and country in the comments." Now, back to the story. Harrison, emboldened by the social jury, took the escalation to its peak. In a moment of raw, unposed physical aggression, he didn't just shout. He grabbed Iris's carry-on bag and threw it into the aisle, then grabbed her arm to forcibly haul her out of the seat, his face twisted in a mask of vicious mockery. "I said move," Harrison hissed, dropping into the warm leather of seat 1A. "Flight attendant, remove this loiterer. She's making the cabin feel crowded." The laughter in the cabin was a physical weight. Iris didn't cry. She didn't scream. She slowly stood up in the aisle, smoothing the midnight blue velvet of her blazer, her eyes meeting Harrison's with a coldness that caused the cabin's artificial warmth to vanish. "You've spent your life thinking a surname and a bank account make you the master of the sky, Harrison?" Iris whispered, the coldness in her tone causing the witnesses' laughter to die instantly. "But you forgot that an airline is a web of contracts, and I am the one who holds the pen. You didn't just take a seat. You just assaulted the lead underwriter of the Vane Aviation Insurance Group. And as of this second, I've decided to trigger the risk liability clause and ground this entire carrier." The cabin's pressurized air suddenly felt heavy, as if the oxygen itself had been revoked. Harrison Vane sat in seat 1A, his smirk beginning to fray at the edges like cheap fabric. He looked up at Iris Thorne, who stood in the aisle in her midnight blue velvet blazer, her deeply pigmented mahogany skin glowing under the harsh light of the massive, tiered crystal chandelier. "Underwriter," Harrison managed a jagged, nervous laugh. "You're a paper pusher. You think you can ground a global carrier because I moved your bag? Do you have any idea who my father is? I know exactly who your father is, Harrison, Iris replied, her voice a low, melodic resonance that seemed to vibrate the very floorboards of the plane. He's the man who signed the total indemnity agreement with my firm, an agreement that explicitly states that any hostile environment or unrestrained liability created by a primary stakeholder, like yourself, allows the underwriter to pull the safety certification of the entire fleet. Instantly, the cockpit door flew open. The captain and the lead air marshal burst into the cabin, their faces ashen. The captain didn't even look at Harrison. He stared at Iris with the wide-eyed terror of a man watching his career disintegrate. Ms. Thorne, the captain gasped. The ground towers just received an automated policy suspension alert. They're denying us takeoff clearance. They say the airline's insurance has been voided at the source. What is happening? The silence in the cabin was now a vacuum. The man in the charcoal pinstripe suit, the one who called Iris a cabin cleaner, dropped his glass of scotch. It shattered on the mahogany floor, the sound echoing like a gunshot. The 8 witnesses who had been howling with laughter were now frozen, their grins replaced by the realization that they were now trapped on $1 billion piece of useless metal. What's happening, Captain? Iris said, her gaze returning to Harrison with surgical disdain. Is that Mr. Vane here decided to physically assault the person responsible for certifying this flight's safety. He deemed me a seating error. So, I've decided to correct the error by making sure this plane, and every other plane owned by his family's company, doesn't move an inch until a full moral liability audit is completed, which, in my experience, takes about 6 months.
6 months? Harrison shrieked, leaping to his feet, his face turning a humiliated shade of purple. We have a merger meeting in London tomorrow. This will cost us hundreds of millions. It will cost you everything, Iris countered, her quiet authority silencing his outburst. Captain, have Mr. Vane removed. He is now a safety threat under the terms of the suspension. And as for these others, she swept her gaze over the witnesses who had mocked her. Any passenger who encouraged this assault is to be permanently blacklisted from all Vane global partners. Their elite status is dead. Their miles are void. They can find a different way to cross the Atlantic. Perhaps they can try a rowboat. The air marshals stepped forward, their hands moving to their belts. They grabbed Harrison by the arms, hauling him out of the seat he had stolen. He screamed and kicked, his expensive loafers scuffing the cream leather, but he was dragged toward the galley like common luggage. The woman who had offered Iris $200 to find her scarf was now sobbing into her hands, her social standing evaporating in real time as the captain began recording names for the blacklist. Iris Thorne sat back down in seat 1A. She smoothed her velvet blazer and looked out the window at the grounded fleet on the tarmac. She didn't need a shouting match to win. She had triggered a clause that turned Harrison's empire into a ghost ship.